Hi everybody, I'm Caitlin, one of the youth librarians at Skokie Public Library, and I'm here tonight with my friends Mary and Kathy, who are also on the youth team, and Laurel, who is joining us from teen. These three are not only exceptional and passionate librarians for young people, they are members of the Hot Summer Reads Committee, who select our annual Best of the Best books for 6th through 8th graders. Before we get into their selections, I thought we could talk a little bit about what Hot Summer Reads is. Mary leads the committee, so Mary, do you want to tell us a little bit about it? First of all, why do you think it's important to have a list for this age group?
Well, this is typically an age when kids have a real jump in how much homework they have during the school year and extracurricular activities. And what that means is they're not reading as much as they were in elementary school. Even kids who were real passionate readers, we sort of see a dip in how much they're reading. And we want to keep them interested in reading because it's a wonderful thing to do. And fiction for junior high kids, I think, is just a really important escape from some of the pressures that they have during the school year. So when they have more leisure time, which is summer, we want to be able to present them with 10 great titles. And it seems to have worked really well. They seem to really love reading in the summer. For instance, here's a book that we have on our list this year that I just love. It's called Magical Boy. It's a graphic novel, and it's written by Vincent Cow, who actually works at Skokie Public Library. It's a great story that makes you think and also is just a real page turner and is hilarious. It's about Max Owen, who's a 16-year-old, and Max was assigned the female gender at birth, but he knows by the age of 16 that he's really a boy. His parents don't actually know this. And his mother keeps buying him dresses, which is just really abhorrent to Max, who cannot wear them. So he decides on his 16th birthday that it's really time to sit them down, come out to them, have a deep, heartfelt family discussion, and everything will be great. But the discussion doesn't exactly go the way Max plans it, because his mother absolutely refuses to believe that he is a man. That's impossible, because it turns out that Max comes from a long line of goddesses, and these goddesses have a destiny to fight evil. And there is evil in the world right now in the form of strange little monsters, and Max needs to become a goddess and fight them. So poor Max was just going to sit down and come out to his parents, and all of a sudden he's got to fight evil, and he has to do it in a dress, which is very upsetting. I'll just show you the dress. Mm-hmm. It's hilarious. He's got a lot of great sidekicks. There's just a lot of fun in this book, and there's going to be a sequel too.
Laurel, how about you? Why do you think it's important to have books for this age group?
Oh my gosh. Well, like Mary said, I think in middle school, people just start getting kind of bogged down with a ton of homework, and they get serious about their extracurriculars, and they don't have as much choice in what they read. So a lot of the people in that age group that I talk to end up really reading only what's required for school, which, I happen to know because I chit chat with some of the librarians and teachers around here that they make some really great choices for their school reading. But it's also hard because they have things that they have to accomplish with their curriculum. And at the library, we kind of just get to be like, oh, we're putting this book on the list because it's fun and awesome, not because it hits a certain curriculum point. So that's right. That's a piece of freedom that we really, really love. And we like to, celebrate that freedom with all of our middle school readers during the summertime. So yeah, we really love it. Should I talk about one of my favorite ones on the list? Okay, cool. I'm going to hold this book up even though I don't have to, but if you could show the cover, Caitlin, because it's a really good cover. This is one of my favorites on the list. This cover is so creepy. And this book really is like as creepy as this cover. Like, ooh, it's so good. So this one is called Hide and Seeker by Daka Hermon. And it takes place in kind of just like a regular neighborhood, not a supernatural world that we know of. And in the very beginning, our main character, Justin, is celebrating the return of his friend Z. And Z has been missing for a year. And as you can imagine, if your best friend goes missing, it's been a really horrible year for him, for his other friends in the neighborhood, for Z's family. Everybody's just worried sick about what's happened to him. They're terrified that the worst has happened when Z just shows back up at home. So he's back and everybody's so excited, but he's just different. He is not the same Z. And to the point where they are constantly wondering like what's happened to our friend and who even is he now? So Z's mom throws him a little bit of a party with some of the neighborhood kids, and Justin and his friends go to try to celebrate. You know, she's really worried about getting Z acclimated and back into his regular life because something is just not right with this kid. So they're trying to play hide and seek like normal, but really, I have no other way to say it, but that it's not normal at all what happens. So, it takes a classic children's game, hide and seek, and really just this book turns it into something that's so creepy, fantastical, fascinating. So, in a regular game of hide and seek, everybody hides and then one by one they start to get found, right? But in this book, people just start going missing, kind of like Z. So that there's just this question that Justin has is, who is this seeker? What does the seeker want? Where do these kids go when they go missing? And you're going to have to read to find out more, but it seems like Justin might be in danger of finding out those answers for himself in a way that he really wouldn't want to. So I also like to tell people that this book, it's definitely very creepy. It's also got some really like fun, witty quips in it. The characters are super lovable. And something I love about this book is it really explores how people react to fear, how people face their fears, how they try to stay resilient in the face of something current that's terrible or a past trauma. And so I just can't recommend it enough. I mean, I always like the creepy books on the list. Kathy and Mary will tell you, usually I'm like, oh, I'll read that one. And yeah, Hide and Seeker is one I just love to talk up.
I read that one too, and I also really like creepy books, and I thought it was excellent. And I imagine that this whole process must be pretty challenging because there's a lot of really good kids' books out right now. So I wanted to hear a little bit about what your selection process is like.
Well, we mostly try to read the very current books, the books that have just come out this year. And we stick to YA. We're reading for grades 6, 7, and 8. So we try to stay within that range. In fact, we're having a meeting tomorrow. We'll start to come up with a list of books that some of us have liked. We will all read them and then we'll discuss them. And we discuss them once a month formally, but we also do a lot of discussing just as we meet each other in the hall. And by the time the school year has finished, we have about 10 great books, sometimes more. And everyone seems to really love them.
Well, I have now a book that everybody in our team loved. It's called Starfish by Lisa Fipps, and it is my best way of describing it. Mother looks at her daughter and says, "Would you like to play the piano?" And the daughter answers, oh, her name's Ellie, "I would love to play the piano." And the mother says, "Great, you can play the piano when you lose weight." What's that got to do with your weight? Ellie's mother connected everything to weight. And Ellie felt small. Not small, actually, she felt very fat, but she felt very sad. And what's she supposed to do? Do you think she can fight back? I'll tell you, I'm rooting for Ellie. See what she does.
Did you all have a book that you felt was like the book of your heart, like a book that you felt really strongly about being on the list?
Well, I was really pushing very hard for Ink Burned All the Bright by Jason Reynolds, who you may know is the National Ambassador for Young People's Literature and also a very popular YA author. And I love this book because it's not so much a book as kind of an illustrated poem, but it addresses what's happened to all of us over the last 2 years with the pandemic and political division in our country, climate change, racial violence. Now we have the war in Ukraine, and it's been a really, really tough year for all of us. And I think kids are maybe not as used to acknowledging that. It's easy to just kind of go on and say, "Oh, I'm fine, I'm fine." But none of us are really fine. And Jason Reynolds has taken the time with this book to talk about all the ways that we've been impacted by what's been happening in our world. And he asks us to take a breath and think about it and talk about the ways in which it's personally affected each one of us and how we might start to heal. And so I think it's a really important book. There are people who read this book and said, no, it's maybe too triggering, or it talks too much about negative things. But I think those negative things are out there, and I think it's important for all of us to face them. And that's why I think it's a very important book, and a book that can really help everybody heal. So I'm very proud that it's on our list, and I'm looking forward to hearing what kids have to say about it.
And that book made me cry like 4 times just in the first half of it. And I mean like authentic, like ugly crying. Kathy, how about you?
Well, I really pushed The Fixer by Jennifer Barnes. It's a political thriller, and I'm basically a political junkie. It's a girl, 16-year-old Tessa Kendricks. She lives in Montana and helps run her grandfather's ranch, and all is going well, but her grandfather is losing his memory, and she has to cover for him all the time, and each having more and more trouble. So all of a sudden, her sister, who she barely knows, she's quite a bit older, comes to town, plucks her out of the ranch, and brings her to right into the center of Washington, D.C., sending her to a very fancy private school. And she's there, and her sister's job, she's well known in Washington, but secretly, she's known as a fixer. So if anyone has a political problem or they have a scandal of some sort, she makes things just disappear. And so here she is watching her sister, and everyone she goes to school with is related to maybe a Supreme Court justice as their father or mother, or some important political figures. All of Washington go to the school, and Tessa suddenly becomes the fixer in that school. Mm-hmm. It's a page turner for sure.
Laurel, did you have one that was, besides all of them?
Yeah, well, okay, so there's one that's so weird and great that actually I got into at the urging of our colleague Rachel on the committee. It's called Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs by Doughty. And the subtitle is Big Questions from Tiny Mortals About Death. So this is a nonfiction selection on our list. And I think it was kind of a hard sell to some of the people on our committee, because even just the title just makes people go, ew, come on. But it's a really interesting book. So the author is actually somebody who has been a mortician, and she has a YouTube channel called Ask a Mortician. And her mission in life is to normalize discussions about death. And so she would do these talks places, and she said that the Q&A was her most favorite part, because just hearing what people had to ask about death and sort of like funereal practices was really interesting to her. And she said that what kids had to ask was just they were by far the most fascinating questions. They were kind of gory questions. Kids just had morbid curiosity. And so she was excited to put these things into a book. And she says some things in the text that I just think are so interesting. Like she says, if you know what's in a bottle of embalming fluid, or what a coroner does, or the definition of a catacomb, you're already more knowledgeable than the majority of your fellow mortals. And I'm like, you know what? That's really pretty true. She also says, we can't make death fun, but we can make learning about death fun. Death is science and history, art and literature. It bridges every culture and unites the whole of humanity. Many people, including me, believe that we can control some of our fears by embracing death, learning about it, and asking as many questions as possible. So what you have here is just a collection of fascinating questions, like the one that led to the title, Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs? And spoiler alert, yeah, cats are animals. They're very closely related to lions. And they will eat food if they need food. But there's just all kinds of interesting questions, like about how cremation works, and why there are certain practices, and how funereal practices are different in different cultures. So really recommend this one. It wasn't an instant hit for everybody on the committee, but people like kind of one by one came around to it. And I think a lot of our nonfiction readers are really going to love it.
So I'm hearing what you're saying about how it was a tougher sell, and that leads me to my next question. I'm actually really glad that you said that. Mm-hmm. My next question is, so when you have that tough sell that you feel strongly about, how do you convince your committee mates to go with it?
Well, I always try to get a couple people to read the books first so that I have an edge coming into the meeting.
That's what a political junkie would do.
Yeah, that's what they would do. That's what I want. And I try to get a couple people ahead so that they're welcoming the book before. I like to know the outcome before I get it.
Well, we do a really good job of listening to each other too, I think, which is what I love about this group. And, you may not like a book personally, but if somebody makes a good argument about why it would be good to be on the list, and this is a perfect example, Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs? I was not a great fan of this book, but it's a great choice for the list. And I'm so glad it's on the list. I don't know, one of the wonderful things I love about book discussion is that you can get your mind changed.
Yeah, I love
exciting.
that.
I like that.
I think
I would not read Hide and Seeker, but I think it was too scary. But I like that it's on the list.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly how it works. Is what we understand is that we're not necessarily reading these titles for our own personal preference. We're reading them for our middle schoolers in the community. And we all know each other's reading preferences. Like I would never hand Hide and Seeker to Kathy because I know she's not into that kind of book. And so we kind of use what we know about each other's reading preferences to say, hey, Christine, you love horror books. Like, will you give this one a read and see if you think it fits the bill for this list? Right. And that's how we do it.
Yep.
I love that. Mary, do you have another title for us?
We have another graphic novel. We have 3 of them on the list this year. This one's called Borders by Thomas King, and it is a really unusual graphic novel. I think it's just fascinating. It takes place at the Canadian-American border. And if you've ever crossed between these 2 countries, you know that if you cross by car, there's a customs agent who stops you and asks you a bunch of questions. So this is the story of a boy and his mom who live on the Blackfoot Reservation in Canada. And they're traveling by car to Salt Lake City to visit the boy's older sister who has moved there. And they get to the border and the guard asks them very routine questions. What's your name? Where are you headed? What's the purpose of your visit? And then he asks, what's your citizenship? And it is this last question that really provides the drive for the whole book, because the mother answers the question completely truthfully, but she doesn't answer it in a way that the guards feel that they can let them into the country. And not only that, but her answer also prevents them from being let back into Canada. So they're stuck in a stalemate at the border. Now, you might have an idea of what she answers, and you might not. If you think you know, then the next question is, why does she answer the way that she does? It's a fascinating book, and I think adults will love this book too. It's called Borders by Thomas King. And the little subtitle on the front page is, which side are you on?
Oh, wow. Where do you find all these books? Like, what's the process that you go through to locate them?
Well, we have a member who is ordering all the junior high books, Denise, and she's a great resource for us. She often has lots of great recommendations. And we also read journals. I'm reading journals all the time and looking for starred reviews or great reviews. And I think we all also just go over to the teen department, don't we, guys? And just look at what's on the shelves. Because you never know where you're going to find a great book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like to get, I subscribe to email newsletters for things like Book Riot. Sometimes we hear about, books that are upcoming. And then Mary and Denise and Christine are all really good about trying to get us advanced release copies, either directly from a publisher or from something like NetGalley, so that we can get our hands on a book before it's available for the general public, which is a nice librarian perk. Yeah. I can talk about another one if it's a good time. All right, fun. Okay, so another book that I just love on this list is called Just Be Cool, Jenna Sakai, and it's by Debbi, Michiko, Florence. And this is one of those books that so for me, I work with teens, and, all of us work with young people. And something that we really can't stand in a book is when the characters are not believable, and when it feels like the author actually doesn't really talk to young people at all. This book is not that at all. I love this book because the characters feel so real. They feel like people that I could have met in our teen room after school. So this is realistic fiction, and our main character, Jenna, she's just the kind of girl who's confident, and she has everything figured out. She has a plan for herself. She wants to be an investigative journalist, and things are going super great for her until they're kind of not. She gets dumped by her first boyfriend, her 7th grade boyfriend, and she does not want to talk about that at all. And her parents are splitting up. She just isn't interested in discussing it. She wants to focus, eyes on the prize. She's in her school's newspaper club, and she wants to write an award-winning piece, and it's what she's really focused on, and it's helping her kind of run from some of her problems. And so she really needs a good place to get her work done. You can't really join a co-working space when you're a 7th grader. So she's having a hard time finding the right spot. And then she comes across this Broadway themed diner. It's a really cute, kind of like kitschy kind of diner. She finds this sweet booth. It's in the perfect location. They have amazing shakes. There's a really wonderful woman who runs this cafe and sings Broadway musicals while she's delivering guests their shakes and fries and things like that. So she gets into this groove. She's found this new place. She goes there to do her research and her writing. And then one day she shows up to the cafe, to the diner, and somebody's sitting in her booth, and it's a boy around her age. And she's just like, is this kid for real? That's my booth. So she tries to kick him out, but he is not budging. And so they kind of are at an impasse. They both have claimed it as their booth. And so they have to find a way to sort of like deal, and they end up getting to know each other a little bit better. And so there's just this great setting, really wonderful food descriptions of cheese fries and things like that, shakes with really fun titles, like names that relate to Broadway. So if you're in any way a theater person, Hamilton gets mentioned a lot in this book. And it's just a really great book about a girl who's hit some bumps in her road, and she's really trying to stay on her path to success. And she's learning how to address some of these problems instead of run from them. So it's a really good one.
That's one that I have not read, and it looks really, really good.
Oh yeah, it's fun.
You would love it, Caitlin. It was really a good story. I'm going to tell you about another book, but it's not quite as upbeat as Jenna. It's called Middleton by Sarah Moon, and it's about two girls, one in junior high and one in high school. They're sisters, and they had to grow up really fast, sadly too fast. Their mother was arrested for drunk driving more than once. The court ordered her to go into rehab, and the older sister, Anna, thought she could pretend to be the mother and take care of the younger sister, and nobody would be the wiser. But then things like rent comes up, and food bills and all the other things that cost a lot of money that two kids not working don't have. So they have to seek out help. They go and join their aunt in a whole different place, and they had to get there and find it. And it's a story that it's really, the girls make you fall in love with them, but you can understand Anna's more angry, and Ella is wanting more forgiveness for her mother. But it's a story of watching them grow up and adjust to their life. So it's fun. I mean, not fun, but it's good.
It sounds really good. I haven't read that one either. I'm like, honestly, like I read about half of them, and the other half are like in a pile to be read for me. How many books would you say that you read all together, like as a group, over the course of, because it's about a year, right? The whole process takes about a year.
Oh my gosh.
How many do you think we read? Oh, hundreds.
That's such a good question. I really
Sometimes
More than 100.
Yeah, sometimes we don't read the whole thing if we decide there's something inappropriate or something.
right.
That's a really does anybody read the whole book even if they hate it? Or is it pretty much like you get to the point and you're like, nope. Mary, you read the whole thing?
Well, yes, because sometimes, and I know that my colleagues will back me up on this, a book is okay until it isn't. So,
Yeah.
you're reading it, you get to page 350, and there's something on that page that you go, nope. You read the whole book.
Yep.
Yeah, I always think like, whew, life is too short. I gotta find the right book. So if I read something that's a deal breaker to me in a book,
Yeah,
where I'm just like, this is not for our list. And that can be all kinds of range of things. Like what we have to think about is sort of broad appeal for our list. And obviously parents are going to decide what's appropriate for their kid, and people will have different, barometers for that. But sometimes we run into something that we're like, oof, this is really much more of a high school read. This is something we can't easily in good conscience recommend to a sixth grader. Then it'll be like, all right, on to the next one, because there's always so many more to read, and we just are ready to find the ones that are right for the list.
right.
I think that's right. Mary, I think you have our last book.
I do. And it is just hilarious. I just love this book. And what I love about it is that it's a makeover book about a character who, wants romance, but the character is a guy. And that is just so cool. It's a kid named Sunny Day. He's a Korean American, 17-year-old kid. He's a complete nerd, never had a girlfriend. He's bullied at school. His clothes are terrible. He describes them himself as shorts the color and shape of potatoes. He plays Dungeons and Dragons. He likes to be on the computer. He creates cosplay props with his nerdy friends. But he has this older brother named Gray who got the cool gene. Gray is a rocker, and he's got a band, and he's out in LA. And every once in a while, Sunny will go into Gray's old room where there are some old guitars and some old cool clothes that Gray left behind. Sunny will put on the clothes, he'll pick up a guitar, he'll, rock out, pretend to be cool. And he kind of wishes he was as cool as his brother. Well, one day, a family friends come to visit the house, and they have this beautiful daughter, and they've just moved to town, and she doesn't know anything about Sunny's social status at all. And he happens to be wearing these cool clothes, and she assumes he's a rocker. Well, he really likes her, and she's really nice. So his dilemma is, does he pretend to be a rocker? Or does he confess that he's really just a nerdy guy who's never had a girlfriend? Or does he actually become a rocker? Which would, of course, involve getting his friends to be rockers too, because you got to have a band. It's just a hilarious and sweet story. And I love Sunny's voice, which is so self-deprecating and funny. And it's just a great read.
I like that the choice is like, well, I guess we're just going to start a band.
Yeah.
It's very, very easy, right?
How hard could that be?
How hard could it go wrong?
Well, that brings us to the end of your list, which is, I mean, honestly, it's so good, my friends. Like, you did such an amazing job. Before we go, we've talked a lot about your process and why it's important and which parts are hard, but I want to know what you like best about selecting books for this age group. What's the most fun part?
I love to talk books.
Me
It's
too.
so fun. And sometimes I get made fun of in the meeting because I can't remember the title, and then somebody will say something, and then I can remember every detail of the book. But I do love to talk books.
I think we all do,
Yeah.
Caitlin. I mean, I just love a good book discussion, and these people are just wonderful to talk books with. I learn so much from them every single time.
I absolutely agree. It's such a joy to come in with a stack of books and look at everybody else's stack and really try to find something that's well-rounded. It's like putting pieces together to get a big picture. And I would say my favorite part of it is when the young people start coming in. So we do a bunch of book talks at the schools. And once they start coming in saying, oh, I've heard about Starfish or whatever it is, it's just so rewarding to know that we've spent all this time reading all these books to find the best list that we possibly can. And to know that these titles are resonating with kids is just like, it's just the most wonderful thing. We love it.
Yeah.
I love that. I love it
agree.
too. I just want to thank you so much, Mary, Kathy, and Laurel, for talking to me, and even more for creating this list. Friends, you can find all of these Hot Summer Reads books and so many more in both the kids' room and, Laurel, are they in the teen room too?
Not yet. We're probably going to do some displays, but we are going to have our excellent bookmark. So you can come on down to the teen room and see what we have in store, and we'll find copies for you.
I love it. Finally, if you cannot find what you need or you don't know what you need, we are all here for you. I think we've all just established that we love talking about books. Come visit us in person or fill out a book match request, and we'll put together a personalized list and we'll email it to you. In addition to our book match for kids, we also offer a book match for grown-ups and for teens. You can find a link in our chat or on our website at skokielibrary.info. Thanks so much to everybody for tuning in. Come visit us at the library, or you can just join us next month for more thrilling book conversation. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.